Waking up felt like drowning. The air around him was thick, syrupy, clinging to his skin as he fought for consciousness. For a wild second, he thought he was still in the wreckage of the ship, that the emergency oxygen system had failed, that he was hallucinating the faint scent of flowers and the distant buzz of insects. His eyelids, heavy as lead doors, peeled open to a world painted in colors that didn't have names in any Earth language. The sky above him shimmered in bands of turquoise and gold, a slow, swirling canvas that shifted lazily with the wind. He squinted, trying to make sense of it all, but the effort sent spikes of pain darting behind his eyes. Groaning, he rolled onto his side and immediately regretted it. His suit, half burned and scratched from God knew what, creaked stiffly against him. His helmet was gone, somewhere between the crash and now it had vanished. And he was breathing this alien atmosphere like it was nothing. That realization sent a fresh jolt of panic through his battered mind. He sat up too fast, coughed, gagged, and then, when he didn't immediately combust or keel over, decided maybe the breathable air was the least of his problems. Small victories, right? Note to self, he rasped aloud, voice hoarse. Survive first. Existential crisis later. The landscape around him stretched in every direction. Endless fields of tall, silver grass that rippled in slow, hypnotic waves. Jagged, distant mountains clawed at the sky. Strange, spindly trees with translucent leaves punctuated the horizon like ghostly umbrellas. No sign of civilization, no wreckage, no familiar stars overhead. He was utterly, completely, spectacularly lost. Stumbling to his feet, he took stock of his supplies. No food, no water, a broken communicator, a single flare gun with count it, one shot. The survival manual back at training had always emphasized preparedness. Rule number 1, stay with your ship. Well, considering the ship was currently playing hide-and-seek with reality, he figured he could bend that rule just a little. He picked a direction, purely scientific method. Spin until dizzy, then walk straight, and started moving, grass hissing against his legs. His boots squelched unpleasantly in the soft ground. For a long while, the only sound was his own breathing, the soft hum of unseen insects, and the occasional crack of something enormous moving very far away. He chose to ignore that last one. He was beginning to think he might actually die of boredom, or irony when he heard it. A rustle, soft, deliberate, close. He froze. Every hair on his body stood on end. Slowly, slowly, he turned toward the sound, heart hammering against his ribs. Standing not 20 feet away, half hidden behind one of the spindly trees, was a figure. At first, his brain refused to process it. The shape was human, or near enough to be alarming. Tall, slender, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head tilted slightly in unmistakable curiosity. But the details were all wrong. The skin gleamed faintly blue under the strange light. Golden hair tumbled in loose waves over long, pointed ears that twitched and flicked with a mind of their own. Her eyes, because yes, definitely a her, were enormous and luminous, like twin suns, taking him in with a mixture of fascination and cautious amusement. They stared at each other. He raised a hand in an awkward half-wave. Hi? She blinked, took a tentative step closer. Her movements were liquid, graceful, almost feline. Okay, he muttered under his breath. Either I'm concussed or I've officially entered the weirdest first contact scenario ever. The alien girl, no, woman, he corrected himself as she drew nearer, stopped a few feet away, head cocked like a curious bird. She said something then, a musical cascade of sounds that didn't resemble any language he'd ever heard. It might have been a greeting. It might have been an insult. It might have been an invitation to dinner. Honestly, at this point, he'd take any of the above. I'm, human, he said, tapping his chest awkwardly. Who man, Earth, space guy, boom crash, ouch. He pantomimed an explosion with his hands, complete with sound effects. To his astonishment, she laughed, a bright, chiming sound that made the world seem a little less hostile. She mimicked his explosion motion, then pointed at him and giggled again. Yeah, he grumbled good-naturedly. Real funny. Laugh it up, E.T. The next few minutes were a chaotic ballet of gestures, guesses, and sheer stubbornness. She mimed eating, he mimed drinking. She mimed walking, he mimed falling flat on his face, purely by accident, but it got another laugh out of her, so he counted it as a win. Slowly, they built a clumsy, ridiculous dictionary of motions. He decided to call her Sunny, because every time she smiled, it was like the whole world lit up. Besides, long-eared blue lady didn't exactly roll off the tongue. Sunny seemed delighted with her new name, repeating it back to him in a slightly mangled but enthusiastic accent. Sunny, she chirped, tapping her chest proudly. He gave her a thumbs up. Perfect. In return, she pointed at him, tilting her head expectantly. Oh, name, he thought for a second. Call me Jack. Jack, she echoed, nodding sagely, as if filing this vital information away. Satisfied with their introductions, Sunny gestured for him to follow her, setting off with a lightness to her step that made him feel like a clumsy ox in comparison. He stumbled after her, trying not to trip over the grass that seemed intent on tying itself around his ankles. More than once, he caught her glancing back at him with an unmistakable grin of amusement. You think this is hilarious, don't you? He called. Sunny's only reply was a quick, teasing flick of her long ears. They walked for what felt like hours, the landscape shifting subtly around them. The grass grew taller, thicker. The trees leaned closer together. Strange, glowing fungi pulsed softly underfoot. At one point, a creature that looked suspiciously like a floating jellyfish drifted lazily overhead. Jack stared up at it, slack-jawed. Okay, he said, voice dry. Either this place is paradise, or I'm about 5 minutes away from hallucinating a talking dog. Sunny just laughed and pulled him onward. Eventually, they reached a rise overlooking a broad valley. Nestled at its center was a small settlement, more a cluster of rounded huts than a true city, but definitely signs of intelligent life. Smoke curled lazily from a few chimneys. Lights twinkled warmly against the encroaching dusk. Jack exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Civilization. Shelter. Maybe even answers. Sunny touched his arm gently, drawing his gaze back to her. Her expression had shifted. Still kind, still bright, but edged now with a seriousness that hadn't been there before. She gestured down at the village, then at him, then made a complicated motion with her hands that he couldn't quite decipher. You want me to blend in? He guessed. Stay quiet? Not freak out the locals? She smiled, nodding once, and Jack felt a knot in his chest loosen. For the first time since waking up on this strange, beautiful world, he didn't feel quite so alone. All right, Sonny, he said, offering a mock salute. Lead the way. Together they descended into the valley, two strangers bound by circumstance, by laughter, by the improbable, fragile thread of trust that had begun to weave itself between them. And somewhere far beyond the horizon, something stirred, watching, waiting. The village smelled like wood smoke, damp earth, and something faintly sweet, like cinnamon and ozone mixed together. Jack breathed it in with cautious relief, his sore muscles protesting each step as Sunny led him down the narrow dirt paths between huts. The structures were round and low, made of a smooth, almost ceramic-looking material that shimmered faintly under the twin moons now rising into the alien sky. Jack couldn't help but wonder if the walls were grown rather than built. Nothing here seemed completely lifeless. The villagers were no less strange and wonderful than Sunny. They shared her luminous eyes and long ears, but their skin tones varied from soft blues to gentle greens, some even dusted with gold. Their clothes were simple, made of woven plant fibers that caught the light in a way that made everyone seem faintly otherworldly. As they emerged from their homes to catch a glimpse of the newcomer, Jack felt the weight of dozens of curious stares. A few children, brave in that universal way children always are, darted closer, giggling behind their hands. One of them tugged on Jack's sleeve and chattered rapidly in the musical alien tongue, pointing eagerly at his boots. Jack bent down, offering a half smile. Yeah, they're called boots. You wear them on your feet so you don't step on, whatever passes for Legos around here. The kid mimicked the word boots with glee, then scampered off, shouting it to anyone who would listen. Great. If this turned into a village-wide fashion trend, he'd consider charging royalties. Sunny seemed delighted by the whole thing, her laughter bright and unfiltered. She led him toward a larger hut at the village's center, where an elderly alien, perhaps a village elder, judging by the intricate patterns woven into her clothing, waited. Her long ears drooped slightly with age, but her eyes were sharp as lasers. The elder and Sunny exchanged a flurry of gestures and musical phrases, with Sunny occasionally tossing in an exaggerated charade for Jack's benefit. Jack stood stiffly, feeling like a very awkward, slightly grubby diplomatic envoy. He caught words here and there, probably names, directions, but otherwise it was like watching an intense game of charades where he had no idea what the stakes were. Finally, the elder turned her gaze on him, studying him so intently that Jack had the irrational urge to check if his zipper was down. Sunny nudged him gently, offering an encouraging smile. Jack cleared his throat, gave a half bow, because why not, and said, "Hi, Jack, who man? Space guy, nice to meet you." The elder blinked once, twice, and then to Jack's immense relief, smiled. She spoke a few slow, deliberate words which Sunny translated with enthusiastic hand-flailing. Apparently he was welcome to stay, provided he didn't start any fires, insult any sacred trees, or try to wrestle the livestock. Jack solemnly promised to behave, even if the mental image of trying to wrestle an alien goat almost made him lose his serious face. Later, after what seemed to be a brief council meeting, conducted via lots of expressive eyebrow waggling and ear twitching, Sunny dragged him toward a hut near the outskirts of the village. It was simple but cozy inside, the floor covered in woven mats, the walls decorated with swirling patterns that seemed to move if you stared too long. A fire pit crackled warmly at the center, its flames a peculiar violet color. Sunny gestured grandly to the room. "Jack," she said proudly, "home." Jack dropped onto one of the mats with a groan of pure bliss. His back popped audibly. "Home, sweet alien home," he murmured, stretching out until he resembled a human starfish. "Not exactly 5-star, but hey, I've stayed in worse places. Remember that station on Phobos?" Yikes. Sunny watched him with a puzzled tilt of her head. Jack grinned in pantomime, snoring loudly. She laughed again, plopping down beside him with the casual ease of someone utterly at home in her skin. They shared a meal shortly after, though Jack hesitated at first. Sunny presented him with a platter of fruits and vegetables that looked like they belonged in a surrealist painting. One wrinkly purple pod twitched when touched. Sunny popped one into her mouth and chewed with relish. Jack, after a brief mental debate involving the words space botulism, followed suit. To his surprise, most of it was delicious. Sweet, spicy, tangy flavors danced across his tongue. One particularly bright red berry, however, made his mouth tingle alarmingly. Sunny clapped her hands with glee when his face turned the color of a ripe tomato. "You planned that, didn't you?" he accused between coughs. Sunny just grinned and offered him a milky white drink that, blessedly, soothed the fire in his mouth. After the meal, they sat around the violet fire, trading words and gestures, building their shared vocabulary, brick by painstaking brick. Jack learned that Sunny's people were called the Aurelians. Their village, nestled in this lush valley, was known as Solventa, a name that meant something like shelter of light. He tried to explain where he came from. Earth, spaceships, star charts, but some concepts slipped through the gaps between their cultures like water through fingers. Still, she listened with rapt attention, her ears flicking thoughtfully as she tried to picture distant worlds and artificial moons. In return, Sunny told him, through words and expressive gestures, about the planet they stood on. It was called Valora, a world ancient and layered with history. Long ago, she said, others had come from the stars much like him. Some stayed, some disappeared. Some, it was whispered, were claimed by the deep places of Valora, where things older than memory slumbered. Sunny acted out a dramatic, spooky monster routine, complete with wide eyes and claw hands that had Jack laughing until he nearly fell over. All right, he said between gasps. Lesson learned. Avoid dark caves. Check." As the night deepened, Jack found himself staring into the violet flames, feeling a rare peace settle into his bones. Despite the strangeness of it all, the crash, the alien world, the risk of accidental cultural offense via wrong hand gesture, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Sonny yawned hugely, covering it with one graceful hand, and Jack grinned. "Long day, huh?" he said, though he was pretty sure she couldn't understand the words. Still, Sonny understood the tone. She stretched luxuriously, ears drooping slightly in sleepiness, and curled up on one of the mats. Jack followed suit, pulling a rough-woven blanket over himself. As he drifted off, lulled by the soft crackle of the fire and the rhythmic buzz of alien insects outside, a thought floated lazily across his mind. Maybe he wasn't just surviving. Maybe, just maybe, he was starting to live. Far beyond the village, across the hills where silver grass whispered in ancient tongues, something unseen stirred, slow, patient, waiting for Jack and Sonny to stumble into its grasp. But for now, in the flickering warmth of their fragile new friendship, the night held only dreams. Morning came with a chorus of chirps, hums, and something that sounded suspiciously like an off-key saxophone. Jack cracked an eye open to find a creature roughly the size of a small cat perched on his chest. It had 6 legs, fur that shimmered in pastel shades, and was enthusiastically grooming his jacket with a tongue that left behind an iridescent slime. He groaned and gently nudged it off, where it bounced away like a rubber ball. "New rule," he muttered, wiping the slime off. "No adopting alien ferrets before coffee, or whatever passes for coffee here." Sunny appeared in the doorway, her face bright with amusement as she tossed him a fruit the size of a fist. He caught it instinctively. Breakfast, apparently. The fruit's rind was tough, but the inside was juicy and sharp, waking him up better than any caffeine ever could. As he chewed, Sunny gestured urgently, her hands sketching frantic shapes in the air. Trouble. Even without knowing the full words, Jack could read the tension in her movements. She beckoned him to follow, and Jack, still chewing, grabbed his jacket and stumbled after her. They weaved through the village, past worried faces and hurried preparations. Tools were being gathered, packs stuffed, water skins filled. It didn't take a degree in xenoanthropology to figure out they were preparing to move. Sonny led him beyond the huts to the forest's edge, where several of the village elders stood, frowning into the distance. Jack squinted. At first he saw nothing but rolling hills and trees, their silver leaves whispering in the morning breeze. But then, movement. Slow, heavy, like something enormous shifting through the woods, just out of sight. His stomach tightened. "That's probably not the ice cream truck," he said grimly. Sonny grabbed his hand, startling him, and pulled him toward a tall, ancient tree at the forest's edge. Its bark was covered in twisting glyphs that pulsed faintly with blue light. She pointed at it urgently, then at him, then mimed, "Opening a door?" Jack frowned, piecing it together. This tree, or whatever it really was, wasn't just some botanical oddity. It was important. A place of escape, maybe, or a hidden passage. He placed a hand against the bark, feeling a low vibration beneath his palm, like the hum of a starship engine idling in deep space. The ground trembled. A low bellow echoed across the hills. No more time for guesswork. Following Sonny's lead, Jack pressed harder against the bark and whispered the only Aurelian word he knew that might be appropriate. "Solventa." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the tree split open along an invisible seam, revealing a spiraling tunnel lined with pulsing vines. The villagers, quick and efficient, began moving toward it, carrying children, supplies, sacred artifacts. Sonny tugged him along, her face tight with urgency. Jack hesitated only once, when he caught a glimpse of what had stirred in the hills. A massive creature, towering and insectile, with translucent wings and too many legs. Its body shimmered like molten metal, and where it passed, the land wilted and darkened. Definitely not a local deer. They plunged into the tunnel just as the ground above shook with the creature's roar. The living walls closed behind them, sealing out the noise. They moved quickly through the spiraling passage lit by the soft glow of the vines, the air thick with the scent of sap and ancient earth. Jack's heart hammered in his chest, but some deeply buried part of him was already marveling at the sheer absurdity of it all. Crash land on an alien world, they said, he muttered. It'll be fun, they said. Meet new people, they said. Sunny shot him a puzzled look, but he just grinned, and she rolled her eyes with affectionate exasperation. Even across worlds, sarcasm translated perfectly. The tunnel eventually opened into a wide underground chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. Massive roots twisted up and around the space like the ribs of some ancient beast. In the center, a pool of luminous water rippled, casting dancing patterns on the walls. The villagers gathered around it, whispering prayers or thanks. Jack couldn't tell which. Sunny led him closer to the pool. She knelt, touching the surface lightly with her fingers, then gestured for Jack to do the same. Warily, he knelt and mirrored her movement. The moment his skin touched the water, images exploded in his mind. Visions of Vellura's past. He saw the first star travelers arriving, their ships gleaming like fallen suns. He saw the rise of the Aurelians, their pact with the living world. And he saw the corruption, the dark sickness that had once nearly consumed the planet, the same force that now stirred again. He gasped, pulling his hand back. Sunny was watching him closely, her face solemn. This thing, he said, struggling for words. It's not just some big angry bug. It's something worse, isn't it? Sunny nodded gravely. She tapped her chest, then touched his, then spread her arms wide to encompass the villagers. The planet, the stars themselves. Connected. All of it. Jack sat back heavily, trying to process. He was no hero. He was a glorified cargo hauler, not a savior of worlds. He had no epic weapons, no legendary lineage, just a stubborn streak and apparently a deeply regrettable tendency to poke glowing alien artifacts. But then Sunny smiled at him, small and fierce, and Jack felt something shift inside him. Maybe you didn't need to be a hero. Maybe you just needed to be willing. He stood up, rolling his shoulders. All right, I'm in. Let's save the day, or at least make a mess big enough to confuse the bad guys. Together, with the village's help, they set about their plan, using knowledge passed down through generations, encoded in the glyphs and living trees. They awakened ancient defenses. The pool's light rose in pillars, weaving nets of energy through the roots in the tunnels. When the creature finally forced its way underground, roaring and lashing, it found itself ensnared, trapped by forces older and stronger than it could comprehend. Jack threw a rock at it anyway, because some traditions demanded it. Afterward, once the dust settled and the beast was sealed back into whatever cosmic horror pit it had crawled from, the village erupted into celebration. Songs filled the air, food and drink were passed around, and Jack found himself at the center of it all, awkward and bemused and strangely content. Sunny sat beside him, laughing as one of the children tried to braid Jack's messy hair with glowing vines. He let them, because why not? It wasn't like he had anyone to impress. Besides, it made Sunny laugh, and that was becoming one of his favorite sounds. Later, under the stars, Jack sat with Sunny on a small rise overlooking the village. The twin moons hung low and fat in the sky, casting everything in silver and blue. He looked at her, this curious, brave alien girl who had found him half dead in the woods and somehow made him whole again, and smiled. I guess, he said quietly, I didn't just wake up on an unknown world. I woke up to a new life. Sunny didn't understand all the words, but she understood enough. She leaned against him, her long ears brushing his shoulder, and together they watched the stars. Jack wasn't lost anymore. He was exactly where he was meant to be, and somewhere far off across the universe, Earth kept spinning. But Jack had found a new home among the stars, and he wasn't looking back.